TV. Romeo Busiku is my name. The next conversation is really pertinent. You need to sharpen your ears in that regard. So sustaining the gains in the Uganda's education sector. Education is as orders human existence, and it is a cornerstone for socio-economic development of any nation. Every country's education system is a powerful instrument for socio-economic progress. Without neither an individual nor a country can achieve resources available to the education sector. So essentially we are talking about how best we can harness the demographic dividend to actually ensure that we harness and sustain the gains within the education sector. To expound more on this conversation, I'm joined by Dr. Dennis Mugimba, the spokesperson at the Ministry of Education and Sports. Filbert Baguma, I also see you. Side Eye, General Secretary, Uganda National Teachers Union, and also Dr. Lawrence Muganga, the Vice Chancellor for Victoria University, is here with us. And of course, I'm going to be kicking off with that is Dr. Dennis Mugimba to tell us how the new curriculum has been faring, especially with at the beginning of the second term. Very good morning, Mr. Mugimba. Very good morning, Dr. Lawrence Muganga. How are you doing, gentlemen?
We are doing good.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Filbert Baguma, how have you been?
Fine. Yes.
Indeed.
And you?
Been fairly well.
Long time.
Indeed. It's been like 2.5 years, finally back here.
Finally back.
The good news is that you are still in the new year.
Listen, Dr. Mugimba, how is the new curriculum progressing? Because I was getting alarming updates from leaders from Hoima. They were calling me and saying they are unable to actually implement the new curriculum. Bring us up to speed with those challenges.
So thank you. Since we rolled out the new, what we call the revised secondary curriculum, what the public knows as the new lower secondary curriculum, that is in 2020 first term, the pioneer class is now the senior 4 class of 2024. So come this O-level UCE examination cycle, that is when we shall know how have we been doing. We have had some great success in rolling it out throughout the country. We provided instructional materials. We've ensured the curriculum is available in the schools. We have done well, but not done 100% as we would have expected for ourselves on training of all the teachers in both the public and private schools. And by the way, when we provided the instructional materials, the textbooks to support the rollout, we provided both to public and private schools. The taxpayer provided for that.
Indeed.
The major challenge we have faced is managing change in terms of the attitude of the teachers. A fundamental shift within the new secondary curriculum for O-level is the method of delivery. The learner is being put at the center. The teacher is the facilitator of learning delivery. Now, that is not the training most of these teachers in secondary schools received in the teacher training institutions or even at university.
Indeed.
You and I, you remember very well when you'd sit in class, the teacher would come and begin dictating notes, writing on the blackboard. But that is not the methodology promoted by the lower secondary curriculum. Now, it is different for me to come and tell you about how you should facilitate teaching in the new secondary curriculum, and now for you to adopt that skill and then practicing it. So changing the attitude of our teachers to adopt a facilitative mode of delivery of learning is a big challenge. The easier way or way out for them is to fall back to the old way of doing things, and actually we've had that in some schools to the disadvantage of the learners. Really, some teachers have maintained using content of the old curriculum, and I can tell you when it comes to October, November, December, UNAB will be assessing based on the new curriculum, not old. So really the responsibility is on the schools it's on the head teacher to ensure that you move ahead with the change that has come. And we are there to support.
Dr. Mugimba, it seems like the challenges affecting these schools are far too many. And to them, they feel like the issue of retooling their teachers, training them in the new lower curriculum is the last of their problems. They have issues of structures that are dilapidated. NTV has ran stories about diverse challenges affecting our schools. Have you been picking up these concerns?
Yes.
In a bit to address them.
Yes, thank you for that. One of the changes and an implication that the new revised secondary curriculum has brought on board is, for example, the seating arrangements. Instead of these rows and columns of desks, the collaborative form of learning requires you to sit around a round table. So it means you have to reorganize the classroom.
Yeah.
But remember, these classroom designs were not meant for that. So this is learning that we have to adopt too. Number two, we have also realized that it requires more consumable materials in the school because of the projects that the learners are engaging in. Now, that is an implication which we have not yet as government increased the resourcing, especially of the public schools. Now, when I say that if you don't increase the resourcing, the private schools, for them, they have the leverage of mobilizing more resources from the parents. But then now you get into the whole conundrum of school fees increments.
True.
Number three, we also have the challenges of the numbers of students. When you look at how the lower secondary curriculum is being delivered, and the current enrollment we have in these schools, you are going to have a challenge because the number of classrooms are fixed. You're not growing the classrooms at the rate at which you're enrolling learners, but also the setup. So the infrastructure quality aside.
That's where government comes in to avail these funds.
Exactly.
For the expansion.
Yes, and even if we do avail, it's going to take some time to reach there. For example, there is a drive by the government to rehabilitate especially the old, what we call the traditional secondary schools. Of course, someone will argue that now the current schools which are 10 years old, they will also become traditional in 30 years' time. But these old schools, they need heavy investment in renovation of that infrastructure. Classroom space, laboratory space. Some of these schools don't have ICT laboratories. We need to put them up. So we are in a state where we have to repair the plane without landing. We have to repair the plane when it's in the air.
Because we are trying to veer away from the chalkboard, but
Yes.
now they do not have even the ICT department, no computers.
We have to increase on the number of teachers. If we are saying that Kiswahili language is compulsory, we have to ensure that we recruit Kiswahili teachers in the schools. We have to ensure that we have ICT teachers in these schools. Now, all this has to be done. We cannot drop one and say we run with another.
The good thing, Dr. Dennis
Yes,
Mugimba,
please.
is that we do have a representative of the teachers,
Yes.
Filbert Baguma. I'm sure he's itching to make a submission on that. He's the General Secretary at the Uganda National Teachers Union. Mr. Baguma, talk to us about the new lower curriculum, the fact that you do have schools that are still relying on the old curriculum. When you speak to these teachers, what are they saying?
Thank you very much. We rolled out this curriculum in 2020, and hardly 1 month into the rollout, COVID-19 came in. At that time, the government had trained averagely 4 teachers per school. Even during that initial training, there were complaints from the teachers that the master trainers who were training them did not exhaust the content, and therefore they needed more trainings. Now, by the close of last year, 2023, only 35% of the teachers had been trained.
Wow.
Leaving a bulk of 65%
Indeed.
not trained. Of course, the materials, before the rollout, the issue even went to the floor of Parliament. And Parliament resolved that they should halt the rollout because they seemed not
To be ready.
That could not work. The rollout continued. Now, of course, the materials to use came in handy. They started with prototypes. Of course, now when you put some of these books online, some school in Kalenga may find it difficult even to download some of these documents.
Indeed.
Not because they don't want, but because of the situation in Kalenga. Of course, I think the resources were not readily available for the rollout, because we saw the textbooks for Senior 3 came in July. Meaning between Feb, when the year started, and July, the teachers did not have the materials for the new lower secondary curriculum.
Wow.
The new lower secondary curriculum requires more time from the teacher. But this came at a time when the teachers were divided into two: science and arts.
Indeed.
And therefore the demotivation, the morale is very, very low.
Arts teachers feel discriminated when it comes to pay.
Completely. And there is no magic that we shall use to have these teachers concentrate unless the teacher issue is rectified.
So the issue of retooling and training these individuals is far from being of a challenge.
You can talk of whatever you want to talk about, but you will not address the issue of the teaching learning process without addressing the teacher question. If you want evidence, go on ground.
So has this led to high levels of teacher attrition, people leaving their profession altogether and saying, I'm going to do something different?
How I wish government would interest itself to know how many teachers are applying for early retirement on a monthly basis since July 2022 to date. Then we would know how much problem we have on the ground. Of course, we have high numbers in classes. Much as the seating arrangement has to change, the methodology has to change, but the numbers are still very high. In some school in Chenjojo, a school had 1,800 students with only 9 teachers on payroll.
Wow.
So how do you expect such a school, even if these 9 teachers were very much committed and want to teach, how do you address this issue? And therefore, we need, you see, even when doctor says they are going to rehabilitate the traditional schools, we need to set priorities right. Some of these schools, the buildings are more than the students. They are there. We have examples. And you find a school very well furnished, but there are no students. And there is another school which is heavily populated.
No teachers.
No teachers, no structures. And therefore, I think rehabilitating traditional schools is very good.
Indeed.
But we need to set priorities. Why would we rehabilitate a school where the learners are just a handful, and yet we have another school where we have very high numbers of students. They don't have where to sit. They don't have teachers. Now, at the end of the day, you have rehabilitated the traditional school, very good. But now, there are no students in this school, and there is a neighboring school where you have students, but they don't have teachers to attend to them. They don't have structures where to sit, and so on. And you know, the enrollment comes with a number of issues.
Wow.
The latrines. You will find they have to make choose to go to these latrines. So I think we need to look at the priorities and set the priorities right, so that we don't lose out on the good thing.
But speaking of priorities, we've also seen a dwindling budget allocation to the education sector. The money is reducing time and again. So when you talk about priorities, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Muganga. Dr. Muganga is the Vice Chancellor for Victoria University. You wrote a letter to President Museveni. You had some issues of concern. You also had suggestions to the education sector and improvement as it is. What prompted that letter, Dr. Muganga? And how engaging were you with Dr. Mugimba and his people at the Education Ministry?
I think my engagement is always public.
Indeed.
Yeah, so,
Indeed.
So it's, thank you for having us this morning. It's really interesting, but at the same time depressing. The conversation we are having today, and I like what Dr. Mugimba said, that right now we have to repair the plane, but without landing, okay? That even includes refueling it. Yes. How you do that?
Yes.
Make changes while moving forward.
While moving forward. We have no choice, because look, the conversation we are having right now, we ought to have had it in 1990, like in the 90s, early 90s.
Indeed.
Okay? But we are having it in 2024. And I'll tell you why. If you look at where we are today as the world, okay? We are talking about a world that has a global GDP of 100 trillions, okay? If you do the math, you know our GDP. But I think 13 trillions of that is 13%, is contributed by the disruptive innovation. Okay? And for that to happen, there is some learning that has to happen. And these are our children that have to do all that. Now, the only hope we have is to repair that plane while it is still flying, such that we can also claim a small piece of that. What is wrong with the plane at the moment? The plane is what everything you're hearing right now. We are talking about the CBC, I call it the competence-based curriculum, right? To me, if you asked me, and I think I am the most neutral person here, even Mr. Baguma is conflicted. You know, if you ask me, yes, the competence-based education culture is the best thing the education sector has ever had in this country so far in our lifetime. Now, yes, these problems are going to be there, but let no one discard that. It's a great beginning for all of us. Practical education. Practical education. We have to stop rewarding sitting time and then start rewarding doing time, production time, not sitting. That's the 1980s that the education system that produced knowledge makers or whatever. Something we don't need that right now. Indeed. Because every knowledge you think that you can have it anywhere. Indeed. So therefore, we have a country. And that's when I say I think I am the most neutral person. We have a country, when you look at what is happening, education, so far, as much as I know, and whatever I know about it, is supposed to be non-partisan. True. Not so, Mr. Baguma?
Yeah, true.
And it's supposed to be a public good. Because there is not every child you educate, private or public, the beneficiary, number one beneficiary is the country.
Indeed.
All right? Including themselves and their families. Now, if we don't prioritizing, okay, yes, it can begin with the Ministry of Education getting the money to put it wherever the priority is, but even when we are budgeting, how do we start even reducing the budget of education?
Indeed.
Where? Like,
seems like the leaders are not concerned with what is happening.
Where do you, like, how do you start reducing that money? Then Mr. Baguma is talking about the science teachers and the arts teachers. And again, as a neutral person, I'll tell you, and I'm sure even himself, if he was confronted with an option to say that, and okay, Mr. Baguma, you have a chance, we are going to first deal with your science teachers and to give them this. But as things become better, as Parliament maybe approves more money, we will give you also this. What would you go away with?
But then the messaging is different from the central government.
Yes, I'm telling you, okay, if the messaging would have done, maybe it would have been done better.
Yeah.
I definitely have to first take for this group, and I know they are sorted. Then I go back and I ask, please, even this group needs more.
But the argument was science is better than arts, so you're focusing on this.
I don't believe,
that is his point of contention.
No, a teacher is a teacher, and we cannot exist without a teacher.
Indeed.
All of us. So, but we are happy for the science teachers, they have something. But we are also saying the arts teachers should be taken care of. Okay? But that goes back to also our Parliament. Where do you place your priorities? Right? Education, you should not cut even a penny, because this entire country, all of us, depend on taxpayers' money. And that's the person who is well educated to be able to do some production.
And that's why they are struggling with explanations to traders about IFRIS. But if these individuals were already educated,
now for them,
it would be a
the
walk in the
traders
park.
are busy thinking government brought a tax. And no one can, they can't understand that this is just an application that is going to help to consolidate everything you're doing. Someone has told them it is what? It's a tax, because they need to be educated.
Indeed.
So if we had done that, and then they know why they are paying this tax, and they see where it is going, because believe me or not, everyone has a child. If you don't have a child, you have a sister, you have a brother, and this person needs to be educated. So we cannot afford. I am just hurt to hear that. I just heard about that when Minister of Education goes to Parliament to ask for money to revamp the A-level curriculum, Parliament refuses. So
they feel like to them it is expensive to administer practical education.
Expensive.
They would rather go with theories.
Expensive compared to what? That is suicide we are committing.
Indeed.
Look, today, if you look at the market cap of the digital economy, it is 17 trillions. The market cap of coffee around the world is 500 billion. Okay? 17 trillions and 500 what? So you can grow coffee all you want, and you can prioritize it all you want. It will never catch the what? The digital economy. But can we revamp our curriculum? Curriculum for A-level, O-level is done, we are thankful, we can rectify all these things, we go down to even primary school, such that we can also benefit from the 17 trillion. Then we are not deprived of resources in this country.
And you even had suggestions in your letter about primary education. So you feel like students should not be going all the way to primary 7.
We are talking about, I didn't say that. That children shouldn't go all the way to P7.
Like primary 7 should be removed, we should find ways of...
No, I said PLE.
PLE.
Yes.
Should be removed. We should stop examinations.
Yes, why? That is another where money is going, and it is not worth it.
Focus on skills.
Exactly. Get that money, invest it in teachers, invest it in infrastructure. Don't assess things. Why are you assessing a child in primary 7 to tell them a story how they are doing terrible? Like, who does that?
Yeah. Okay.
So now, but moving forward, if you look at what is happening, why the beauty of competence-based education.
Yeah.
I was actually reading through this vision today, and they were talking about it as well. Now we see that UNEB can assess these students of ours, and 20% is coming from the things they do. Okay? how it is collected to trickle upwards, that's another story, but that is not my problem. Now, the 80%, I wish now, that's a good start. And then we can have a conversation to tell Dr. Mugimba and Mr. Baguma that maybe we need to push it to 50%, 50-50. Okay? But we should do it at A level too, and primary. Parliament should not at all. This is non-partisan. We should not even be debating about money. It's one thing to say, okay, where is it going? Show us. Yes. What is it going to do? This. What are we benefiting? This. Okay, we will hold you accountable next year to see that these things are done. But don't stop giving them money.
Dr. Mugimba, you can respond to those
Thank you so much. You know, listening to Dr. Muganga, it's as if he was in my vehicle this morning when someone brought up the issue of our priority investments. And the thing is, if we do not harness investment in education, we are not doing a good service to the 72 trillion budget we are setting aside. We need to be able to create our own competent workforce to work in these investments that we are setting up. Number two, we need to ensure that we do not tire of continuously improving what we have begun. You hear cries of, you know, you're not doing well on the lower secondary curriculum, stop it, go back to the old. No. When you're having challenges in a marriage, you don't decide to divorce immediately. You hang in there and continue working on it. And when you hang in there, it will work out. What we need to do as a country is let us all support investment in education. It is a catalyst, it is a game changer. When people are satisfied with education, they'll be satisfied with what government is doing. You will get so many benefits that are beyond the sector. You'll get innovators both in the formal and informal sector. There will be entrepreneurs. Everyone is not supposed to be an entrepreneur, but the path is made easier when you have a land population. Now, the investment, we had a plan to begin with to go to the primary school curriculum and also have it revised. Implemented it has a inclination of being competence-based, but want it to align with the O-level curriculum. We want the A-level curriculum to be aligned with the O-level curriculum throughout the entire cycle. And the universities, by the way, for them, they are a bit ahead of us, but we can learn from them even as we revise the A-level curriculum. So, but all this needs money. And by the way, it doesn't need too much money. You just give us 250 billion, we'll be good to go. 250. And we are not saying that we start both at the same time. We can get 60, 70 billion, we'll clear the A-level curriculum. But all this needs money. But who appropriates this money? It is Parliament. The members of Parliament have to put their feet down and say, give education money.
Indeed.
And all these improvements we are talking about, you know, putting up the ICT labs. By the way, what Filbert is not telling you, and he's aware of this fact, is that we don't have enough teachers also in these schools.
True.
We need to have these teachers in the schools. We are already saying we have a 7.5 trillion wage budget as a country. But yes, we need to see where is that 7.5 trillion? Where are those employees? Can we invest in the areas where we need them the most? And one of them, I'm saying, from a selfish perspective, is education. Let's have more teachers. These teachers, 125,000, 50, 80,000 in secondary schools, they are not enough. We need more teachers
and we also
to handle
need
the enrollment.
And we also need Parliament to give them more money.
Yes.
Dr. Mugimba,
So
we need to
and all this, we cannot depend on borrowing.
No.
Indeed.
We cannot depend on borrowing. So even the 30 trillion that the Commissioner General URA is going to mobilize, how can we prioritize where to allocate it? Let's
move away from wishful thinking. Dr. Mugimba, we are in the information age. Technology is taking over, you understand. Is there a chance to move away from the chalkboard and over to using technology? You have all these machines within the classrooms. Is that possible? in this day and age?
It is possible, and as Dr. Lawrence Muganga said, it is overdue.
Yeah.
By the way, we've had so many interactions with him as a ministry, and he's given us very great insights. One of them, if you go to the book he authored called
Fish Climb Trees.
Yes, Fish Can't Climb Trees. It's a fantastic perspective of how to rethink education system redesign. Now, we are already late. So where we are thinking of walking, we should be running.
That's right.
And we cannot do all this unless we have the right human capital in place. Right. It begins with having the teachers in place. By the way, when you have the teachers, yes, then we have to redesign. For example, one of the things we need to think about as a country, we may not have the trillions needed to build up all this infrastructure we need in the schools, the 15,000 schools. But can we decide maybe to use a shift system so that the same facilities are having more learners going through and more teachers in the same?
I would like to hear more on that issue of technology from Dr. Mugimba, but let's kindly take a very short break. We'll be right back with this conversation, focusing on how best we can, sustain the education sector and harness the gains. We'll be right back. All right, morning at NTV is the show you are watching this beautiful Wednesday. My name is Romeo Busiku. Don't forget, we have a State of the Nation address coming your way tomorrow. The President will be talking to the nation. Look out for that. But at the moment, we are talking about how best we can sustain the gains accrued within the education sector. I do have Dr. Lawrence Muganga, Vice Chancellor, Victoria University, Dr. Mugimba Danis from the Ministry of Education and Sports, and also Filbert Baguma, the General Secretary for the Uganda National Teachers Union. Of course, Dr. Mugimba, you were still explaining to us the significance of technology.
Yes, the critical personnel we need in place, first of all, is the right teacher. Because we have within the platforms where we deliver learning from, the critical character there is the teacher. There is digital interventions for learning delivery, but also digital interventions for systems management. But in all this setting, the teacher is central to it. Number two, we have to make sure that we have affordable ICTs in terms of internet, in terms of accessing the gadgets. Now, we also have to have the infrastructure. Now, government has made a good decision. Even as a ministry, right now, every school we are putting up a new school, we ensure that we have the layout of ICTs inbuilt. Number two, we are providing an ICT lab that is fully equipped. Now, all this also comes with, you have to maintain these labs. So that means the cost of running that school will slightly go up. So our financing of the schools has to match the interventions that are coming in. Then what we also have to do, and we are doing, is to ensure that we come up with a digital strategy that will guide us as a sector on the proper directions we need to take. Number two, guide the public investments in this. And also, when we get friends and partners who want to help us in this way, to direct them. And we've had some coming in with the expression of interest to even set up production facilities in the country. Now, talking about these production facilities, how much would love to have these facilities employ Ugandans to work there? So, but how do you do that when you're not producing enough or the right manpower with those competencies? So yes, that is what we are doing as a ministry. We have to finance this strategy. We have to look at where we are beginning from. We have decided that let's prioritize higher education and tertiary institutions. One, the space is not as big, the institutions are not so many, the return on investment is a lot faster. Then we move lower to the secondary schools before we go to primary. Because what you need to invest in, just 12,500 primary schools is quite hefty. We have around 1,400 secondary schools. That's quite a lot of money as well. So we want to begin with the higher education institutions and tertiary to do that. But it will also bring us the benefit of efficiency in delivery of education. You looked at what happened to us during COVID.
Long
by
distance
the way,
learning.
Yes, these things which we are seeing now, other countries have, it's been business as usual
from the 90s, the 80s,
from the
and so
90s,
forth.
exactly.
Expired.
So we have, that's why I'm saying we should not be walking or trotting. We should actually be running because we are being left behind. But all these need capital investments in the sector. Now, we have to make painful trade-offs because all these innovations are not going to wait for us. It is us to catch up. So there are things we have to stop doing and say, let us redirect our public investment in education because the dividends are huge. In 2019, because of what Australia has been investing in education over time, they've been able to attract a huge number of foreign students. In 2019 alone, Australia was earning more than $25 billion from foreign students.
Foreign programs.
Yes. So imagine what that investment would be like here. Because when you have a very strong education system, it is like honey. It will attract people. Yes. It is a magnet. People will come and you'll get the dividends.
All right. So let me also bring in Filbert Baguma on the issue of technology. Let's veer away from wishful thinking. Give it to me as it is. Is it possible to veer away from the chalkboard and we have tablets in that classroom, computers for our learners? Is it possible?
First of
with the
all,
current status quo, budget cuts and everything?
First of all, if you look at the economy of Uganda and compare it with the economy of Rwanda, and you look at the education, how much investment Rwanda has made in education, you will not believe. We have thresholds globally. Countries committed to funding education between 15% and 20% of their national budgets. Uganda, we are at 89%. They committed to funding education up to 6% of the GDP.
Indeed.
We are less than 3% of our GDP. So where is the investment in education we are talking about? Just here in Rwanda, the learners have got the gadgets we are talking about. The teachers have them.
Yet they went through political turmoil in the 1990s.
Why not
Yet we had
Uganda?
the peace.
I think there is a need for a deliberate effort.
Political willingness.
Yes, because where do parliamentarians see Uganda going? Because they are the ones who are appropriating money. And therefore, it is possible to move away from the chalkboard. It is possible to have these gadgets. Because if a country deliberately said, we are going to have, let's say, a laptop per teacher, it becomes very cheap. Very cheap. And it is possible. And then we concentrate on trainings. We start with teachers. And then later on move to the learners. But right now, it is to whom it may concern. We have teachers who are teaching ICT. But because you did ICT geography, you are deployed and you are teaching ICT, you will be paid as arts.
Wow.
Someone did mathematics ICT, will be paid as science. Now, where do I get the motivation? As someone who is teaching ICT, my colleague is teaching ICT, he earns 5 times more than I do.
But then the problem now is that even those who have been earning more, the science teachers, we're getting word that they are also vacating and retiring from that profession.
Obviously,
so
the workstation becomes hostile to them. Because, I mean, if you are in a village and you are the only person with the food,
I see.
do you eat it comfortably?
No.
it will be insecurity to you, and therefore
buy an extra door.
but even if you build a very high perimeter wall, they will waylay you before you enter.
Yes,
and therefore we need to have deliberate efforts to look at education as education and invest in education, and all that we are talking about becomes history. It is possible, but we need a deliberate effort.
There is also calls to have a radical change.
Yes.
Baguma, to discard this whole framework, the curriculum that we have that was introduced by the colonialists, to do away with it. Do you envisage a situation? Because in the UK right now, they are training a doctor from a very young age. But this is the education system they introduced here that we are continuing with. Do you envisage a situation whereby Ministry of Education conducts a radical change and we are training our doctors, lawyers from a very young age?
You see, we need a think tank, and people come up with an overhaul. Because even when we try to reform, we still reform from the other copy and paste. We are not yet having our own curriculum.
Thank you.
Even when we talk of this new lower secondary curriculum, we still force every child to do exams at the end of the day.
Indeed.
Why don't we have these parallel programs? If you are skilled, go that line and reach wherever you reach, and you are assessed in that line, you go.
Specialization.
It is not true that you only need to be academically giants in order to be successful in life.
Thank you so much.
And that's why our education system still remains not very relevant to our daily life. Sure. If you go to these successful traders, successful farmers, they were once in our school setup and they were regarded as failures.
Indeed.
So how does a failure become a successful farmer, become a successful trader? And therefore that means our education system does not identify the potential in these.
Mr. Baguma, could that be the reason why our students do not know what they want? If you move to any Form 6 class right now and you asked out of 100 students what they want to be or what they want to do at the university, they don't know.
Because they are forced
They will tell you,
they are forced to follow one line.
University, and then I'll think of what to do.
They are forced to follow one line. You must first pass exams in order to become someone. And that leaves a lot of our children unaccounted for. They enter school, but nobody can account for them. And some of them drop out of school because where you are forcing them, they are not able.
Dr. Mugimba, I may not be able to cram notes and then pass exams, but I could be a very good builder, very artistic in that regard. Is there a chance for us to come up with an education system that is entirely African, responding to our needs?
Yes.
Not studying Canadian prairies and so forth.
Yes, it is. And I think as I speak now, we're on the right trajectory. About 5 or 6 years ago, Dr. Muganga will remind me when we interacted with him and brought some of all these. When I hear the questions you're posing to us, it's as if you actually connived with him
and I didn't even know he was coming.
Because those are some of the questions he was putting across, presenting the ideas he had for the education system.
Like mine.
Yes. So one of the things he was saying was that it is possible to bring out a system, to design a system that provides for the multiple intelligences or competences a learner has. And to package all this together, the minister about 3 years ago now put in place the Education Policy Review Commission. I know that Dr. Muganga made a presentation there, I have seen, yes, Honorable Mshega is chairing that commission, and I'm sure that within this financial year that is going to begin, we are going to receive their report of findings.
Indeed.
So we are all eager.
We've been waiting.
Yes, we are all eager. We want to know what is it that you have found. They have benchmarked with other countries in the region, outside Africa. So we want to see and hear what they've come up with. But it is very possible. And some of the things, ideas that I have had, I don't know whether they'll be adopted, is can't you have a dual system of education whereby you have general academia in the lower levels, but as you progress, you're having a vocational arm to it. Is it possible? And if you go back to the history of our system, there were comprehensive secondary schools before they had a vocational aspect to it together with academia. These things are possible. It is possible to have digital education delivery interventions. All these things are possible. However, the challenge is these good recommendations, when they come, do we have the resolve and commitment to put the finances in it?
Exactly.
You know, education is like fuel to a vehicle. There are no shortcuts to it. You have to put in fuel. The mileage you get after you have refueled. So all these are coming, but we need Parliament to take the bold step.
Then let's continue giving them the reality check so that they see need to actually give us the money in the education sector, because it weighs heavily on my heart, Dr. Muganga, whenever we need engineers, construction workers, we run to the Chinese. And then we are like, okay, SFC, please come and fill the potholes. UPDF Engineering Brigade, you will help us raise structures. Where are the engineers who went to school for that particular job? Can we train them from a young age?
I had someone say, much as you're still crying for the inadequacy of engineers, someone was saying it's only in Africa, maybe in Uganda, where you have an engineer who sleeps in the dark.
I know, right?
Electrical engineer. So,
I think that is the issue we are doing.
It is all an issue of investment. Right
Theoretical education,
for example,
is not working.
Right now we are renovating and expanding 17 technical vocational institutions. But we have 140 public technical vocational institutions. Even if every year, if we could say we are going to tackle 30 of them and ensure that when you send there your child, they are going to get quality in terms of you have the facilities, you have the right curriculum, you have the right instructors. We are even struggling to get the right instructors because there are few. So, but all this is part of the
doctor. You see the challenge we have, and we need to have deliberate efforts. Every parent in Uganda, more than 90%, believe that from P7 you are supposed to go to senior 1.
Yeah. That's a mindset.
From
broken.
senior 4, you must go to A level. If you don't, then you are an academic failure. That's why when you go to these technical vocational schools and colleges, you will find the enrollment is very small because people believe
the bias
that going there
it's for failure.
Means you are academically not upright. Now we need to educate our parents and guardians, because even when you look at the choices, they don't put there. They only go there to look for places later. Now we need to change that kind of mindset in our stakeholders to know that you have options. This is not for failures.
But Romeo. Just something small. You see, we are talking, and he talked about the parent, and this is where I need to come in and talk to the parent. That we can talk about all these things. But like I said, this conversation, much of it belongs to 1990, 91, 92, 93. Right now, you talk about inclusivity in budgeting and even education in general. We're talking even about ICT and teaching these our teachers these ICT competencies. Let me tell you, today, there are technologies that have wiped out even that. That right now, if you're teaching a teacher, the various ICTs you're doing, AI can do those things. Like, you don't need an ICT teacher to do these things. Yeah. Like, you're going to tell a teacher to do this.
Virtual reality, augmented reality.
Like AI can do everything. Number two, virtual reality. I was talking about, I was talking to tourism. There was an expo recently. And they were grappling with the problem of lack of numbers coming to Uganda. And I'm telling them, look, the way you talked about us rethinking the education system, you people, it's very simple. In this day and age, rethink the definition of a tourism. Very few people, the countries you see as big, US, Canada, Norway, France, that they are coming here and you're collecting money from them, it is not even 1% of those people who afford to come here, okay? And very few times I want to pick us as a destination. Can you take tourism to them, to everyone there using technology? So we need to start rethinking. Maybe this is the time where Dr. Mugimba and even Parliament, and they should start being intentional, like Gilbert said. Think of Starlink internet, for example. Negotiate with the providers and spread the internet around this country. That is feasible. Kenya has done it. Botswana has done it. Like,
we shall get the tablets without internet.
Now you have the ability to bring the what? And when you're purchasing in bulk, okay, then everything becomes peanut. Intentional, being intentional. As a country, don't look at Minister of Education. You have a member of Parliament, I have one, he has one. They should care about our children, their sisters and brothers, and invest money intentionally in education.
Speaking of intentional moves, according to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education.
You know what, before you go there, you know why I said these things are doable? Dr. Mugimba told you about 5 years ago, 6, when we had that interaction. I was not a Vice Chancellor of Victoria University. I went there. We started implementing these things. It's a private institution, but every student has a laptop, has a tablet, has a smartphone, does everything digital. If you're talking about an institution that has supported the environment, we went paperless, completely, not the exam, not the teachers moving around with the handouts, or every exam digitally done.
That was a great move.
Coursework digitally done. Everything digitally done. You graduate a student who knows everything about technology, and they did not study ICT. So it is doable.
I've seen third-year students doing their internships unable to operate a computer.
Exactly.
Third year, journalism. They come, they want to do internship, but the person doesn't know right click, left click, opening the folder. And I'm like, okay, what is happening?
And
what did this person study?
You know how you can do that? You don't even have to have a subject called ICT.
You don't.
Indeed.
You can do work, give exercises, give homework, give whatever assignments, and you are giving this learner, say, go research on this, go on the internet. They can learn ICTs by themselves. Without
but there is a good
that.
question here.
Yes,
according to the Permanent Secretary in the Education Ministry, Education, Sports and Skills Sub-Program was inculcated in the next financial year, which is the focus on finalization on the national school feeding policy, establishment of the National Teachers Council, construction, expansion and equipment of technical institutes and others. How feasible is the plan?
It is feasible because we are already in progress. We took the National Teachers Bill, which was born out of the National Teacher Policy of 2019. Cabinet has cleared it, so it is going to Parliament. We have also had Parliament pass the resolution on establishment of the Uganda National Institute for Teacher Education, UNITE, which will be established at Shimoni. We've already budgeted for it. It's in the new budget. We are already working on the renovation and rehabilitation of technical vocational institutions. Right now we are tackling 17, and we think that we should be able to handle another 30 in the next financial year. So all those are already moving on. We also have the technical vocational bill, TVET bill, that is going to Parliament. We have already had a certificate of clearance from Minister of Finance. So all these...
The National School Feeding Policy. I need to hear more of that.
Yes, on school feeding, the current position of government is that feeding remains a responsibility of the parents.
Which is a problem. Some parents are unable to afford
it is
doing
the
that for their
position of government, because as we've been talking about here, the issue of priorities. We know that feeding is critical. We know the benefits, by the way. When you have feeding, you have a high retention rate of learners in the school, you have attention in the classroom, so we know that. But we are not able to fund everything.
The good thing, Filbert Baguma is here. We can talk about how callous that would be and the effects of parents continuing to feed the learners.
But is it possible? Romeo, even that...
Given the poverty levels?
But, you know, we are saying that, but we're also saying government should also raise 309 billion to have a completely free universal primary education. And we want to start that next financial year. So when you talk about that, remember the resource envelope you have is this much.
Indeed.
So how much are you going to slot in? You cannot push in everything. You have to say, what can you handle this year or in the midterm, given the projected resource envelope? But you can, yes, we know that school feeding is good, but government is not yet taking it on board because given the reality.
But we are here to let government know that they should be taking it on, because we are registering high levels of learners dropping out because they are running on an empty stomach and they cannot grasp anything in class because of that.
Preaching to the choir.
Baguma, go ahead.
You know,
yes.
We have a project in Karamoja, Moroto and Nakapiripirito on child labor. So I had gone to the field to check on the progress. And very early in the morning, I saw children carrying containers going to school. No book, no pencil, no what. But every child had a container. So when I reached school, I was inquisitive to find out what the containers were for. Because in the early days, we used it to carry containers to fetch water and, you know. So they told me that is for porridge. They don't have a book, they don't have a pencil, but every child has
a container.
A container. That simply tells you that that is a poor factor. Now, it is true the parents must contribute to education of their children. But the way government brings it is what makes it complex. Because they say it is your responsibility to feed your child. But they go ahead and say, we don't want any parent to pay any coin. Now, that becomes almost impossible to implement, because some of the parents do not actually have the container where to pack this food. But it may be easy for them to contribute beans, to contribute posho, or to bring an equivalence in terms of cash.
Gentlemen,
so
time is first spent. We could go on and on discussing these issues, but then the time we do not have. Filbert Baguma, General Secretary at the Uganda National Teachers Union, thank you so much for having made the time to speak to us. Dr. Mugimba, Dainis, you're always busy, but you've made time.
Thank you.
And I always enjoy the interactions. And Dr. Lawrence Muganga.
Thank you.
It's the first of so many. In the near future, we need to be talking about education moving forward. You understand? And in my opinion, I really believe the whole task or challenge of feeding the children should be levied onto the central government, because it is the responsibility of the central government to retain the learners in school. Now, if they're not eating, they are dropping out. So it is your responsibility to feed the learners so that they stay in school. My name is Romeo Busiku. This is Morning at NTV. Always an absolute pleasure interacting with you on this platform. I return tomorrow, same time. Good morning.